High Tech High Graduate School of Education info session. We're excited to have you join us. We are the first graduate school to emerge from and be fully embedded in a network of K-12 innovative schools. Tonight's agenda, we're going to begin with a kind of overview and history of High Tech High, the 13 schools that the graduate school is embedded within, and how the graduate school came to be. And then we'll give you an overview of the M.Ed program and educational leadership. The best part of the evening is hearing from current GSU students and alumni, and then you'll have an opportunity to share your questions with us, and anyone from the panel will respond to those. At any point during this info session, on the left-hand side, you have a little blue icon that says Q&A. Feel free to click that and send your questions in, and we'll kind of hold on to those as we're presenting and come back to them during the Q&A. So High Tech High was started in 2000, and we're often known as project-based learning schools focused on innovation, but really we began off as an equity project. And we knew from the beginning that we wanted to ignore a few basic axioms that you too often see in schools, which are to separate students according to perceived academic ability. This often and unfortunately will correlate to socioeconomic level, education level of the parents, ethnicity. So when kids are kind of separated, sorted, and ranked in schools, we often perpetuate a lot of inequity in schools and society. So we knew that we wanted to ignore that premise that kids needed to be separated. We also wanted to ignore the idea that we needed to separate kids working with their hands with kids working with their minds, and really integrate the disciplines so that kids could be making, building, and doing, and also on a rigorous kind of college-bound track. So rather than separating AP honors classes from vocational classes, we knew that those things would be integrated through project-based learning in our school. The third basic axiom is to separate school from the world, that learning happens within a school and within the confines of the four walls of a classroom. We know that authentic learning, meaningful learning, happens most often when kids are integrated into the outside world, working alongside mentors, going on internships, tackling and working on real problems that adults are also engaged in the community. So as much as we could, we wanted to blur the lines of what traditionally is seen as school and what kind of happens outside in the real world. High Tech High schools are founded on 4 design principles: personalization, common intellectual mission, adult world connection, and teacher as designer. So the 13 schools, which now there are 3 campuses, one in Point Loma where the original High Tech High school started. We also have a campus in San Marcos in North County, San Diego, and also near the border in Chula Vista, elementary, middle, and high school now. And with these 4 design principles, you'll see a lot of differentiation in how those are implemented at the schools, and a lot of school site autonomy, because our schools are teacher-driven and really student-driven. So school leaders often lead from behind and facilitate a process to really empower students and adults in the building to make real change at the school. But these 4 design principles are kind of common across our schools. They came out of the New Urban High School project. Rob Reardon and Larry Rosenstock, our founders, were on that project with others such as Debbie Meyer, Ted Sizers, that were very influential in the small school movement. And so our design principles came out of a study they did together, traveling around the country, looking at urban schools, where they found pockets of success and greater results as far as equity issues and student achievement, and what could they learn from that. So the first is personalization. Our schools are small by design so that our kids are known well. You'll see advisory in our schools, so small groups where students meet across grade levels and they have the same advisor for the whole time they're at that school, who comes to their house and does a home visit, gets to know the family, and is a liaison between the school and the family. And the curriculum itself is personalized, so rather than doing school to kids, we're doing school with them, and they have a lot of opportunity to share their voice, make choices in their learning, not only in what they learn, but how they share it. The second is common intellectual mission. So all of our kids are held to the same high standards and are all on a college-going track. In the high school, we meet or exceed all the A through G requirements, which are what you need to have taken in high school to apply to a 4-year school in California. And so we're working with all the kids, not separating and sorting them. We have a blind zip code lottery that pulls kids from all over San Diego, very diverse, about 50% that are on free and reduced lunch, really diverse ethnicity. We have about 1 in 3 are the first in their family to go to college. So when they come to us, we're making sure they have a rich, integrated learning environment that is fully inclusive, also of kids that are on IEPs or have 504s, that we're all working to support them in being successful. The third is adult world connection. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but that our projects connect to meaningful and interesting problems that adults are also tackling in the community. We bring professionals in often to mentor our students as they're doing projects, and we also push our kids out to do field work, community projects. They do exhibitions of learning. Sometimes those are at school, and sometimes those are at local cafes, art museums, community organizations where they can share their learning with adults outside of the school community. And the fourth is teacher as designer. So you will not find kind of a set curriculum that's handed to teachers when they work at High Tech High. We find that treating teachers as professionals that have a lot of autonomy to be creative in their work and to design learning experiences that build off of their own passions and interests, but also the passions and interests of their students. We've actually wondered if whether we should move this, change this design principle to teachers and students as co-designers, because we're really trying to move towards designing learning experiences that are unique to the group of students that year and responsive to their interests and to their needs. So over the last 15 years, we've grown from 1 high school to 15 schools, elementary, middle, and high. And in that time, we first started an intern credentialing program, which is for teachers that are new to High Tech High, that are new to teaching and need a credential, or they may be teachers that have taught in private schools, higher education, or they're transitioning in their career from being an engineer or artist to moving into teaching. So we've done that for a while before we started the Graduate School of Education. But we made a decision to start the graduate school because we knew we wanted to stay small and not have 100, 200 charter schools across the nation, but do fewer schools well of higher quality in San Diego, where we could really have a rich network of teachers and directors working with each other and supporting each other and getting support from our charter management organization. But we had thousands and thousands of visitors each year that wanted to come and see High Tech High as kind of a model where they could find inspiration and take different aspects of what we're trying here back to their own schools. And so we saw the graduate school as a growth mechanism and a dissemination mechanism rather than just building more and more brick and mortar schools. So we host conferences, institutes, residencies. We have a deeper learning conference in March that's a really large annual event. We do a hybrid online program. 2 actually, one focused on project-based learning, one focused on leadership for teams that are kind of working on school transformation efforts. There's a lot of overlap between the 2, but both of those are non-degree granting hybrid online programs. I touched on credentialing, also induction. You're here today to learn more about the Masters in Educational Leadership. And we also started a research center on equity and innovation, are doing a lot of improvement science projects across our K-12 schools, whereas graduate students, you'll be working alongside directors, teachers, and embedded in schools doing that research together. So the M.Ed in Educational Leadership is for experienced educators. Typically, as you've probably seen looking over our application materials, we recommend having at least 3 years of experience in education. If you have less than that and you have other experience that's relevant, we encourage you to still apply and to kind of reach out to us. So that's typically people have 8, I would say, to 12 years experience in education, so more experienced educators that are looking to either do more leadership from the classroom and develop as teacher leaders. They might be interested in becoming school design coaches, curriculum designers, or moving into administrative positions such as academic deans, dean of students, vice principals, principal positions. But they're interested in honing their own practice in their classroom, but also developing as leaders. There are 2 options. There's a 1-year full-time option that begins the first week of August and goes through the end of June. With that option, you are embedded in one of the 13 schools through a residency. The high-tech high schools we call clinical sites. They're not a model that we are hoping graduate students will replicate. They're an example and a really rich context for learning, trying out ideas, learning by doing, and really practicing leadership in our school sites, and then coming back together in the GSE classes and reflecting on that experience. In the one-year full-time option, you might be partnered as a resident depending on your interests, and we really personalize this with a veteran teacher, co-teaching. You could be partnered with a high-tech high director. You could be partnered with a dean or college advisor, or even someone at the charter management organization. In the one-year full-time option, you have class 2 to 3 times a week. Typically 2 nights a week you're in class, and then every other week there's an afternoon fieldwork class. The 2-year part-time option is for working professionals in San Diego, either employed by high-tech high or employed by other schools in San Diego. But you do need to be situated within a K-12 context, because so much of our learning is applied and we're putting into practice the ideas that we're exploring through the graduate school. And the 2-year part-time option class meets 1 time per week for those 2 years. So our approach, in all of our coursework, there's a focus on 3 things. Focus on equity, so how are the decisions that we're making in our classroom, and how are the decisions that we're making as leaders guided by equity. Deeper learning, so you might call that student-centered learning, constructivist learning, progressive pedagogy, but what we're trying to get at there is really deeper ways where kids are engaged in learning tasks that are meaningful, authentic. There's an audience outside of school. They have opportunities to share and exhibit that work. We're blurring the disciplines, so you'll see teams of teachers working together on interdisciplinary projects, so kids don't feel like they go from one subject to the next and they're asked to do different things by different teachers, but we're trying to really shape a cohesive experience for them. So we're thinking about how to do that in our classroom as teachers, and then what type of leadership is needed to support teachers in creating deeper learning environments in their classroom. And the third is leadership for school change. In our model, there are times where you will see our directors lead from the front, but more often you're going to see our school leaders making as few decisions as possible, leading from behind, really facilitating opportunities for teachers to address areas of their practice or areas of the school they want to improve upon, and really bringing out and harnessing kind of the potential of everyone in the building is how we think about leadership, and using that as a way to drive school change. Our approach is also to learn by doing. So we really want to get away from a traditional ivory tower model where you go to graduate school classes, you're reading a lot of theory, and you might be thinking about what might happen in schools, but you're not actually applying and reflecting on that. So we're constantly learning through the graduate school by actually doing meaningful work in the K-12 setting. Each of the courses has a project that's personalized by our graduate students. So in our deeper learning course, you might be designing a project you'll co-teach at some point during the year. In our facilitating adult learning course, you're thinking about coaching and how you want to work with your colleagues at your site and become a better coach using video to inform your practice. But there's a lot of different entry points and ways that you can personalize the projects based on your own needs, interests, passions, but also what feels most authentic to your school site. And the third is integrating theory and practice. So we see theory as a way to inform our practice and then reflect on that, but also our practice that we do through research in the GSE informing theory and the knowledge base in the field. So you can see a more detailed diagram of what the courses are and what this looks like in depth on the GSE website. But very briefly, there are kind of 3 strands that run through the M.Ed. program. There are core classes that change kind of every 6 weeks, and they meet 1 time a week for 3 hours at night. I mentioned the equity deeper learning course, facilitating adult learning. There's also courses on school law, school finance, using design thinking to create innovative schools and guide change. Courses on authentic assessment, inclusive classrooms, and there's a couple. We have a cohort-based model because that's really the strength of the program, is the relationships that you build with the students in the program and also the faculty, but there are a couple opportunities during the year to kind of choose which courses you would like to take as well. So that's one strand. The second is the leadership fieldwork. And so everyone is in a context, whether you're in the one-year program and you are assigned to one of our schools through the residency, or in the two-year part-time program, everyone has a context and they're working. So the leadership fieldwork is a way to really push and develop your leadership skills to work on change projects at your school, work on coaching, guiding professional development, practicing kind of working with students on issues when they come up. We use a lot of restorative justice and restorative practices in our school. So it's opportunities to kind of stretch and grow as a leader in a really safe way, and then come and reflect on that with your cohort. So there's 6 projects total connected to the fieldwork at your school site. The third strand is a series of classes called Inquiry into Practice. This is your capstone master's project. In the fall, you're designing an inquiry question, digging into the literature, and developing a proposal for what you'll do in the winter term for that 12 weeks. But it's based on a passion or interest that you have, something you really want to dig deep into over the course of the year, and something that serves a need at the school site. And maybe the graduate students, when they speak, can share a little bit about what they did or what they're doing right now regarding their master's project. In the winter, you're doing your kind of actions and data collection, the actual doing of the project, and then the final 12-week term in the spring, you're preparing to share your learning. There's a presentation of learning, there's an academic writing component, and then also a more open product, which could be a website, it could be a book, it could be a film, a way that you want to show and kind of share your learning more broadly with other practitioners. So in the one-year option, you're doing all of these 3 strands in 1 year. So one night a week you're taking the core classes, one night a week you're doing the Inquiry into Practice courses, and then every other Tuesday this year we had our fieldwork class in the afternoon. And you're doing all 6 rounds or your 6 projects in that 1 year for your fieldwork. With the 2-year option, you take your core classes in the first year, and then in the second year of the program you do your master's project or capstone. You also will do 6 rounds total of the leadership fieldwork, or 6 projects, but you do 3 in each year, so the time frame for each project is a little bit slower in the 2-year part-time program. All right, so a brief, I'm not going to go deeply into admissions because you can find everything on the apply page on our website. Just a reminder that our priority deadline is February 1st. If you would like to be considered for a fellowship, it's really important to try to meet that February 1st deadline, because it's kind of a first come, first serve as far as how we try to allocate some of that fellowship money. Some of the considerations, you'll see that the M.Ed tuition is advertised at $25,000 on the website. Due to support that we have for the graduate school, we can offset that cost for almost everyone. We can offset it further when we're looking at diversity fellowships and really trying to strengthen kind of the richness of our cohort and people that bring in different perspectives and background experiences, but also have served high-need students. The second is residence in the 1-year option. We've had a grant in the past from the Walton Family Foundation. We are looking to secure funding for future years, so we'll know by the time we kind of hand out admissions decisions this spring what that looks like, but it's a very substantial support to cover tuition and also help with a paid internship during the 1 year that you are working at our schools. And the third is for international students. So we know the cost of kind of coming from abroad. We now can help support the visa process, and we have our first international students this year. We want to make that more accessible, so we have a greater kind of fellowship for people coming and doing the 1-year program from abroad. Okay, great. So now we're going to hear from current students and alumni. As they're speaking, you can go ahead and start typing in questions into the Q&A, and we'll kind of take those after we hear from students. But we'd love to hear what brought you to the GSE, what stands out about your experience, what have been your biggest takeaways, and what advice would you give to new students? And feel free to share anything else that comes to mind. Maybe take about 3 to 5 minutes each, and then we'll move into Q&A. Juliet is going to share first.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name's Juliet Kern. I'm the executive director of a middle school in the Summit Network, Summit Denali, a little bit north of San Jose. And I, last year, was in the Educational Leadership M.A. program full-time. I found my way to High Tech High's Graduate School of Education after about 8 years in urban education in charter schools in Boston and Washington, D.C. And after that time, I was reflecting on my next steps, having been a teacher and then a curriculum director, and really was looking for a just way of reimagining school that would better prepare students for the world that I saw in front of them. And just looking for a different approach to school that would challenge my thinking and really push me in my learning. At the same time, I did not want to leave the K through 12 context. I love working with students. That's sort of what gives me energy and what keeps me, joyful in my work. So I was looking for a step that would both allow me to learn more and also stay connected to students in the world of teaching and learning in that context. So I was really excited to find the school leadership program that was that 1 year embedded in a school, in a middle school, that allowed me to both learn through classes, but also constantly reflect on my own experiences and put into practice the ideas that I was learning in those classes. That's always how I found learning works best for me, so I was really excited to find that and applied to the program and was excited to be accepted last year. Thinking about what I gained from the program now about 6 months out in a leadership position at a school, I am a very different leader than I would have been had I not been part of the Graduate School of Education program. I think I reflect on my leadership from the small little things that I learned about maybe how to talk to a student to the bigger how to build a team ideas every day, probably multiple times a day. And I think probably the most important thing that I take away now is just a really much more clear understanding of what's important to me, my own philosophy in terms of education. And I think being in the program gave me the space to connect with my passions around really valuing joy and kids loving school, really valuing relationships and building relationships, whether it's with students or with teachers and with teams, and then also really honoring and empowering students to have voice and choice in their education. And in fact, that's what I did my research project on. I studied what students would say is most important to measure whether schools are effective. I had seen a lot of different metrics for how we evaluate schools, and I was really excited to find out what was important to students, and found out that they really valued and were what was most important to them was their relationships with teachers and other students, which was really affirming. I think in addition to those things, I also take away something that Kelly mentioned earlier, which is the importance of leading from behind and sort of building on everyone's ability and capacity. I think of my role now as a leader, the most important piece is really building everyone around me and empowering them to do their best work, whether it's students or teachers or anyone I interact with, and really building that collaborative team that is going to work together. And I think that goes to the importance of, as a leader, collaborating with others. I was struck by the leaders around me that were always open to talking through things and figuring things out with one another, and it's something that I've tried to put in practice every day since then, and continue to call people, whether they're from my cohort or other leaders that I work with now, to just continuously check my thinking, build on my ideas, try things out together. And then the last thing that I take away and think about, and was a really important piece to my work in the program, is the emphasis on equity and evaluating all my decisions, the different systems and structures we have in our school, through that lens of equity. One of the most powerful things when I first came to high tech was realizing how segregated the schools I had worked in previously were throughout the East Coast, and how rare it was to find a truly integrated school and how valuable and important that was. So I think my lens on equity was expanded and enriched by the program, and it's something that I really build on each day in my leadership, or try my best to. I think that's it.
Great, thank you, Juliet. We're going to hear from Samara now, who's a current student in the program, and she is partnered with a veteran teacher at High Tech High Media Arts and can share a bit about her experience in the program and also her residency.
Hi, my name is Samara Francisco, and I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. So I traveled many time zones and many miles to come to the GSC here. I taught for 5 years in Tennessee and Arkansas public schools, and the last 3 years I spent as a high school English teacher, specifically in a charter school in Memphis. At the end of last year, I felt like I was at a crossroads where I could continue doing the work I was doing, which made me happy, and I thought it was kind of having the results that teachers sought out. And I could stay there and kind of plateau in my development, or I could seek out other opportunities to kind of challenge myself and just find out new, deeper ways of getting students to think and really pushing my practice forward. I really thought that I needed to look somewhere outside of where I was currently living in Memphis and look beyond just local grad school programs and look for something that would really allow me to stay connected to the classroom but still provide a challenging intellectual environment to really think about how to better my practice. So it was actually a friend of mine who found the High Tech High Graduate School, and she showed me how they had a residency option as well as the one-year master's program that allowed you to not only do your master's classes during the night or sometimes during the day, but also work in a school. So I was very attracted to that option, especially the idea of being able to work with a veteran teacher. So I've been paired with a teacher who has been in the classroom for 15 years and is excellent at what she does. And I learn from her and from the students so much every day. And I'm just really grateful that I was able to find a program that made sure the coursework was meaningful and relevant, and also stuff that I could literally put into practice when I go into the classroom every day. What stands out the most to me about our experience so far is the meaningful and relevant classwork that we're asked to do. So I think my favorite class so far has been the one on project design, in which we actually had to come up with a traditional project-based learning project. And it was interesting because when we first started the grad school program, we participated in the same orientation that all the new teachers to High Tech High went through. And a lot of that orientation was around what is PBL, what are the structures that kind of allow teachers to create and implement their projects. So we kind of learned about the systems and kind of saw things from afar, but this class really forced us to do it ourselves and to really get basically down and dirty and create projects, come up with ideas, critique projects, tune them, get feedback, make revisions, and just go through the entire cycle. And it was a really rewarding experience to understand just how much work goes into making a project meaningful for your students. And ideally, it's something that any of us will be able to execute in the future. And my ideal plan is to hopefully implement my project next semester in the classroom I'm working with. And I think my most important takeaway that I've attained from the program so far is just, like Kelly and Juliet were alluding to, is just the importance of the relationships with colleagues. I've had the great fortune of having great relationships with my colleagues at schools I've worked at in the past. That's never been something that I've not experienced, having great teachers to work with. But the difference I've noticed is that we were always very nice to each other in those school environments and very social and congenial and great friends, but not necessarily great colleagues that helped each other get better in their practice. So the challenge here at High Tech High is really not just to be great friends with your colleagues, but really to help improve everyone's practice and to give constructive feedback that really helps them be a more effective teacher or more effective leader, rather than just telling them what they want to hear or just the warm feedback. So that's been a very important lesson and something that we practice at the school site that I work at, as well as in our graduate school classes. In all of our graduate school classes, we're paired up with critical friends who give us feedback on our work and comment on our ideas and our thoughts. And it's been a really valuable way to ensure that, again, we're not just being nice to each other, but we're actually challenging each other and pushing our practice further. Lastly, I think the advice I would give to future students is to think very concretely about what you're hoping to gain from completing the program. The program is very open in that it can be personalized to your interests, so make sure you know what you want to get out of it before you kind of step into this role, and then keep evaluating periodically what more you can do to ensure you're getting out of the program what you want. Take advantage of any opportunity that you're presented with in order to help you reach the goals that you set out for yourself to help develop into the leader that you want to become.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, Laura. And we'll jump into Jen, who's going to go next. Jen is a current resident, and she is partnered with a High Tech High director and can share more about her experience at High Tech Middle North County.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Morrison. I'm from Alberta, Canada, so I'm one of the 2 international students in the master's program this year. I have some notes, so if I'm looking down, that's what I'm looking at. So the first thing, what brought me to the GSE? Kelly alluded to the amount of visitors that come to High Tech High every year, and I was one of those visitors who participated in a PBL residency. And the intention of that was to go back to my district and be a leader of PBL in my school. Ironically enough, what happened is I felt the way I wanted to feel in schools down here, and I really wanted to explore that some more. So when I found out that the master's program was opening up to international students, it was something that I really wanted to explore. I'm the type of person that when I set my mind to something, I make it happen. So I was really determined to do the research and really look into this program, what it's about, opportunities that can happen when you're here, and I just knew like this was where I wanted to be. What stands out to me about this experience, there's so many things, it's kind of hard to narrow down, but I would say the first one is just the opportunity to view the schools here and organization from so many different lenses. I'm a resident at High Tech Middle North County, but one day every single week we have what's called 20% time. So if there's a school that we want to go visit, someone within the organization that we want to spend some time with or ask questions to, these people are available and super accessible. So that was a big eye-opener to me and something that I've really appreciated. The program, as Kelly sort of alluded to in terms of the model of High Tech High, is very personalized. So you can really tailor your experience to whatever you want it to be, and understand leadership from a variety of angles. I think that my understanding of leadership prior to coming down here was a little bit limited, and I'm realizing how many different opportunities are available to be a leader within education. So that's been really cool. And then the other thing that stands out to me is what I'm doing for my research this year. I'm really interested in this idea of personal vision and goal setting, and Danielle Laporte is one of my favorite authors, and she wrote a book called The Desire Map, which is creating goals based on how you want to feel. And what that made me think about was how can we merge professional development in a really meaningful way for staff that is based on their personal visions for growth and like what is unique to that school site. So essentially my research has to do with developing personal visions for all of the teachers within the staff, determining what those common threads are, and then developing a PD plan based on what those visions are. And then in conjunction with that, using collegial coaching as a model to implement what those professional development sessions are. some key takeaways that I've had is just the amount of personal and professional growth that I've experienced being down here. I've lived in many different areas of the world, but this environment of the high-tech high schools really does force you, as Samara said, to take a look at who you are, what do you want, and ultimately, what do you care about? I'm making some really strong connections with the people here, and I'm a relationship person that is really meaningful to me, so it's been really nice to connect with so many different people in the organization in ways that are authentic and genuine. And my thinking's being pushed. Like I said, like I had certain ideas, as Juliet sort of alluded to, of what equity is, or what leadership is, or what a classroom needs to look like. And I just feel like I've done more than a 360. It's almost like, I don't know, 720 or something. Like it's been, I've really, I've learned so much about what is possible in schools. Advice to students, a couple of things. You have to be open when you come down here, because you're going to experience a wide range of emotions and learning. So you just need to be open to that. Curiosity is a really important facet, I think, to this program. You may not be super clear about what exactly you want. I know Samara had a really clear idea what she wanted to research. I sort of did, but as time has gone on, I've sort of aligned myself with what I authentically wanted to research. So curiosity is really important, and just being open to that. And the other thing is just remember what you bring to the table. If you're applying to this program, you're already a progressive thinker, and you have something to give and something to share with the school that you'll be a resident in. So that's really what I have to say. Also, if anybody has any questions for me personally, you're welcome to email me or be in touch anytime.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Jen. And I think, I mean, I heard some themes there, definitely around personalization, which can be really wonderful because you can tailor things based on how you want to grow, but can also be overwhelming. So maybe you could share a bit about how you kind of took advantage or are taking advantage of personalizing your learning experience, and how I know when people first come, it takes a little bit of time to adjust to being in a new city and a new schooling environment, and to develop kind of a sense of purpose and belonging when you're new to that community. So how did you go about kind of personalizing your learning and also getting a sense of kind of your purpose in the schools?
Yeah, when I came down, like I said, it was almost like I had this very structured idea of what my experience needed to be. But what I've realized is that I'm here for a reason, and I mean, that reason may not be super clear to me all the time, but this is such an opportunity. And so it's really about thinking what gets my heart pumping. And so Kelly and I had this conversation a while ago when I was talking about visions and the importance of that personal vision within practice. I mean, for any teacher, you know, if you ask any teacher, why are you here? If they can't answer that, that's something they really need to explore. So I just started to realize, like, that I needed to pay attention to what got my heart pumping. And when I did that, it actually became a lot more simple and a lot more clear as to what I wanted to do. So I think that was the really big indicator to me. And it's, you know, being in the new city, I mean, at times it's lonely, but at the same time, I'm making such great and meaningful connections with people, and I really feel supported. In many ways, I haven't felt alone. So for anybody that's thinking about coming from outside of the States, I mean, I came from Canada, but if you're thinking about coming from somewhere else, just know, like, you will be 100% supported here, and you won't be alone in your time. So.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Jen said, and just add, I think the idea of such a personalized learning experience is such a gift, but also sort of intimidating, because you can explore and focus on sort of whatever you're passionate about. Like Jen said, what really gets your heart thumping, what gets you excited about education, and that's such an amazing opportunity. And it means that there's so many options and so many choices. But I think being in a place that you have these strong relationships that you're building both with your the folks that you're taking classes with, the folks at your school, you can really unpack and have conversations and figure out what are those things that you're really passionate about, that you're really interested in. And then that passion is able to sustain you as you go through the different classes and you look at it from different angles. So while it definitely felt like a risk in a lot of ways to narrow in and focus and not have necessarily something prescribed, you got to choose. It was a risk that really paid off, and I know allowed me to explore things that I'm really passionate about and are going to take with me throughout my career in education.
Yeah, and just one final note on this idea of finding your place in the residency. I think for a lot of us, the first month at least, we were kind of showing up to school and wondering like, oh, what am I really supposed to be doing here every single day? Because you have so many options and opportunities for working with teachers, especially if you're a school leader, or for me, the teacher I was working with working with specific students or groups of students. But after a certain point, after you kind of observed and see the way things go, you find a place based on what you're interested in. And so for me, after seeing kind of lessons that either myself or my co-teacher taught, I kind of recognized that, like, for me as a teacher, what I'm interested in are facilitating student discussions, and I was just noting certain trends and patterns. And so based on those observations, that actually kind of created this desire and this action research question that I then turned into my my year-long master's project that I'm working on. So at first it was somewhat awkward to just be observing and not necessarily, quote, actively teaching, but eventually it allowed me to find my place, and now I can incorporate my research into also teaching in the classroom.
Wonderful. We're going to hear from Steve Hamilton. If you want to share, Steve is our dean at the graduate school, and I wanted to give him a chance to share anything. And then if you have questions, on the left-hand side of the screen, there is the Q&A. It's a blue icon. If you click on that, you can send questions into us. We'll hear from Steve, and I know Jen had something else to say as well, and then we'll begin taking your questions. And Samara needs to pop off for class, so.
Bye, Samara. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to comment as a newcomer to High Tech High, coming from several decades at Cornell University, working in more conventional graduate programs in human development and education. A couple of the things that strike me that are distinctive, I think, about graduate education, the experience that graduate students have, from my perspective, not being but working with graduate students, include the fact that they are part of a vibrant community, not only of other graduate students, but also of the teachers and school leaders they work with on a daily basis. You are not alone, as Jen and Juliet emphasized. Another is that although this is a program about practice, it is a program in which students learn to conduct systematic inquiry, a form of research that is about solving pressing problems in schools, and that's quite distinctive too. It's not just how to follow administrative procedures, nor is it how to do research as if you were going to have a career in research, but how to use research to solve problems. And I think that's an important part of it. A third is that the graduate students are immersed through their reading, through their dialogue with their community, and through their action in issues around equity and innovation in education. That's really what the program is about, what their day-to-day experience is about, and come out as a result. And again, you heard, I think, all three of the students talking about how their ideas about those topics have changed, and that too is something distinctive about our program. So if those are things that you care about, this is a good place to study.
Great, thank you for that, Steve. And I know Jen wanted to share a little bit more about interesting leadership opportunities that she's had during her residency. And Juliet, maybe you can think back to when you were a resident last year, different ways you took on leadership in the school and kind of grew from that.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on when you're a resident, not only are you working with the school site, but there's shifting that happens in the organization all the time. A teacher could go out, a director could shift roles or positions, and for me personally, for the last 7 weeks, I've actually been the interim director of the school that I've been at, as my director had an opportunity come up within the organization, which was amazing, but I was, I don't want to say thrown in because I don't feel like that, but I stepped into this role, and what's interesting is it's been the best learning experience for me just because I've been doing the job. So that's been really, really awesome to have that opportunity. I know that a couple of us have had different sort of opportunities, but it's just been really great. And, like I haven't felt alone at all. I know the supports are there, but I've also realized that I can do it. So I just wanted to put that out there, like it's been exciting, and I've been happy to have stepped into the role and sort of be that thread between the director that was there previously and this amazing, fabulous director that we have coming in very soon. So, yeah.
Great. And Juliet, thinking back to last year, how did you think about taking advantage of opportunities to practice leadership, and what did that look like for you in your residency?
Absolutely. So a couple of things that come to mind are, as Kelly mentioned earlier and Jen talked about as her entry into high tech, there's lots of visitors that come to the schools, and often there'll be workshops that visitors have about project-based learning or about literacy and project-based learning. So I had the opportunity to work with a few other residents to design some of those workshops, to lead them, which is a pretty amazing opportunity because not only is it working with the high tech high community, but it's sharing these ideas with other folks in the world, which is something that is a really important skill to learn and develop as you're in the high tech community, to see how those ideas play out in the larger education world. Also, more specifically within my role at the school I was placed in, I was able to have opportunities to coach teachers, with the director I worked with there and my mentor, to get some immediate feedback on my practice that helped me grow incredibly. And then to do things like lead professional development at the school, which I know Jen is doing as well right now. And then last but not least, to work with student issues and to really work with either the director or the dean at the school to try out strategies, learn, observe, watch. And I think all of those leadership opportunities were incredibly valuable.
Okay, wonderful. Any kind of final words? We're going to wrap up soon. Any kind of final thoughts? You don't have to share anything else, but if you have something else you wanted to say.
I'll just say that if you're participating in this hangout or in this call, you're a progressive thinker, and you're obviously, I don't know, seeking something that's probably going to push your thinking or put you in a position to learn something different about education. So explore that, and listen to that intuition. I am so happy that I've had this opportunity to come down here. There's been times, as there always are in life, where you think, like, was this the right choice? Am I in the right place? But, I'm exactly where I need to be. So if you're participating in this, that means that you're seeking something, and I definitely would encourage you to do some research, really look into the schools, watch as many videos as possible, get in contact with people. They will respond, and those conversations will definitely happen. So that's what I would say. Really encourage people to seek it out.
And I would just add to that and say, I think if it hasn't been clear from our comments so far, this is an incredibly powerful learning experience. I remember on my first day of class, my instructor at that point teared up a little bit because he was so passionate about what he was teaching. And I remember at that moment just thinking, oh my gosh, where am I? In education before, no one ever cried. And and just reflecting on that and thinking about how this is such passionate and such hard work and hard work. It's just, it really shifted my paradigm and made me realize how important that connection is in those personal relationships, and it's something that I haven't looked back since. I definitely have teared up a lot more than I would have in the past, and I think that speaks to the power of this work and the importance of this work. And then just the last thing, the relationships and the connections that I built at my time at High Tech have just really been an amazing resource and sort of a sustaining force in my work ever since, and I just feel so grateful for those relationships, and I know those are the things that I will take with me going forward.
Our students have spoken. I don't see any way I can improve on what they've said. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Juliet, and thank you, Jen, for joining us and sharing your experiences. And I know when you were seeking out the program, you spoke with alumni. It's a great way to learn more about the program. So if you're watching today and you have questions and want to just kind of dig deeper into what the experience is in the program, please reach out to us and we can connect you with alumni, kind of help support that process. So we encourage you to apply. We're here to help. The priority deadline is February 1st. We also wanted to close by extending an invitation to our annual Deeper Learning Conference, which will be March 23rd through 26th. This year, we would love to see you there. It's a great way to spend time in the schools and kind of better understand the environment here. Hope you have a great holiday, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good night.
Good night.